This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English. Here's your host, Martin Johnston.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll English. In today's show, I don't have anyone interesting, so I speak to Dan the Man about waking up early and obviously the benefits of that. Because anyone that follows me on social media will see that yesterday I got up at 6 o'clock to cycle to the beach. That's because I'm an early bird. So if you don't know what that means, early bird is a morning person. And if you're interested, the opposite of an early bird is a night owl. And that's obviously someone that enjoys the nighttime more than the morning, which is definitely not me. Anyway, that's enough of me talking. Now you can listen to two boring people speaking instead of just one. So, enjoy the show, and I will speak to you again at the end. Dan the Man, how are you today?
I'm very well. How are you?
Very, very well, Dan. How did International Kissing Day go for you?
It went very well. What about you?
Incredible. A lot of kissing my hand. Great day, as always.
Yeah.
So, Dan, how are we starting the show?
Well, have we actually got a review this week?
The answer to that question, it's a good question, and the answer is no. We haven't got a review. The only comments I've received this week generally say things like, oh, this content is fantastic. Go to my website for similar stuff. And then they leave a link, and it's websites like iwantsex.com.
Did you go?
Well, I imagine it's spam, but you've got a good point, Dan. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's people that really do want sex. Well, with you and I, and they've created this website, iwantsex.com. So
yeah, I'll go to it. I'll be sure to go to it.
Me too. So I have a question for you, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
What time did you wake up today?
8:30.
Do you know what time I woke up, Dan?
6.
Correct. Because that is the topic of today's show, is waking up early. So we're going to start with like a quote about waking up early, look at some of the benefits, obviously some of the negatives, because this is a negative show, and then give some information about how the rockers and rollers, so that's the listeners, can wake up early. You okay with that, Dan?
Of course.
Okay, so the quote we have here is from Mr. Benjamin Franklin. Do you know who he is?
Yes.
Well, personally, or?
Well, no, because he died God knows how long ago.
Nice little term there, though, Dan. God knows how long ago. So nobody knows. It's a long time.
Well, somebody knows. Somebody knows.
Well, yeah, but it's difficult. That's the point of saying God knows. So the first quote I have here is, early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
That's very good.
What does wealthy mean, though, Dan?
Well, it could mean anything. It could be financially rich or rich in rich.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Well, generally it's financially rich, like 99% of the time, I would say. And then the other percent is like spiritually, maybe.
Mm-hmm. You're neither.
Well, I'm certainly spiritually rich, Dan, okay? So, apparently, from things I've read, successful people seem to wake up early. And there's something which I don't quite understand here, Dan, because I know you generally wake up very early. So something doesn't quite add up here. What does it mean if I say something doesn't add up?
Something doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so what's going on, Dan?
I could say the same to you.
No, I'm only joking. It's absolutely true. The same for me. But generally now you live in France and you are unemployed, Dan. What time do you wake up?
I'm finding it a lot. Well, when I was in England, I was getting up at 4:30.
I know you were, and I actually wanted to comment on that because that is seriously hardcore. Like, I mean, I wake up early, normally like 6:30, but 4:30 is another level. Hence why I said hardcore, because that's like intense, serious. And now what time do you wake up?
Well, I would rather not say. I'm struggling to get used to A, the heat, and B, the heat.
The heat, though, is a nice word there, Dan. Not many people know this. Is the noun from the word hot, because often my students say the hot. And does that make sense, Dan?
No.
No, it doesn't. So we say the heat. So your mozzarella skin suffers in the heat, even in the mornings when you're in bed?
No, it's not that. It's just I'm so tired from the sun.
It's difficult, Dan. It's a difficult life.
Yeah. But next month, I'll be back up to, I'd say, 6. I'm not getting up at 4:30. That's stupid.
That is crazy. That is bonkers, Dan. Another word for crazy there, bonkers. So let's look at some of the benefits. So it says people that wake up earlier are happier. So do you feel happy when you wake up early, Dan?
Yeah. Do you?
When do you wake up early then? Because I've never seen you happy in my life in 27 years.
Well, I'm never happy when I'm talking to you. But in general, if I get up early, I'm happy.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay, thanks. Well, I'm always happy though, Dan. So, you know, that's easy for me.
But didn't you start getting up early based on what I told you? I'm sure this is true.
This is something I actually wanted to bring up later. There's something to say. I must actually give you credit here, Dan, because I followed Dan the man's lead in this one. He said to me, I get up early. It's fantastic. You should try it. I said, no, it's impossible. And now what do? I get up early. So you are my God, Dan.
And I told you to do exercise in the morning. I'm like a father figure, aren't I?
Well, yeah, in fact, I might start calling you Dad.
Please don't. Please don't.
So let's look at some of these other benefits. So it says people that wake up early are more productive. That's from Harvard University, which I find is strange because they say the reason people are more productive is because there are less distractions. Again, do you need a university study to tell you that?
Yeah.
Anyway, do you feel more productive when you wake up early?
Yeah, of course. Do you?
Well, yeah, but only till about midday, and then after that, my brain stops working.
Yeah, but then you can relax. I think you get more done in the first 6 hours or first 3 hours.
Also true. I probably do more in 3 hours, Dan, than you do in a week.
That's
at the
bollocks.
Moment.
That's bollocks.
Remember, bollocks, very actual swear word to say that's rubbish. That's not true. So another study from Texas University said students get better marks at school. So obviously marks are things like A, B, C or whatever. So this is probably why you got really shit marks at school.
I didn't get shit marks at school.
Because you only got into waking up early later. So when I said there, you only got into waking up, what does that mean, Dan?
You only started getting up early.
Yes, so he only got into it later in life. So that explains why you did so shit in school.
I didn't do shit at school, and you know it.
You did quite shit.
No, I didn't do shit at all. At all.
Sure. So it says people that get up early have a better diet. Especially related to breakfast. And I actually have something interesting here to say for the first time ever, maybe. Because when you are sleeping, like you sleep for 7 or 9 hours, so obviously you're not eating. And when you're not eating, what's another way to say that, Dan? You are?
Fasting.
Or you could say a fast if you're using the noun. And you need to break that fast. So put those words together. And what do you get, Dan?
Breakfast.
That's where the word comes from, because you have to break the fast of not eating.
That's actually quite interesting.
Well, I warned you, Dan. I have something actually interesting to say. Okay, you were not prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And it says here that because you have more time for breakfast, apparently, so it's not so interesting. The second bit wasn't as interesting, really, was it?
Yeah, well, not really. No, you should have had more prepared. I don't really eat breakfast.
Dan. That is not good news. So this one is actually interesting as well. It says if you wake up early, you have better mental strength. Okay, Dan, and I've noticed that since you have moved to France, your mental strength has been, quite frankly, embarrassing.
Have you noticed that? Really? Yeah, it's probably true.
Before, when you were waking up at 4:30, I had a little bit of respect for you because you were strong mentally. Now, it's embarrassing.
Well, I don't know what to say.
Well, wake up earlier, Dan, and improve that mental strength. It's very simple, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's look at the negatives now because, we love negative stuff on this show. These are ones that I've just invented from my experience. And the first one is basically saying goodbye to a social life because if you wake up early, it's impossible to go out late.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Dan? How's your social life?
Well, I never had one, I don't think, so I think it was a pretty easy transition for me.
Nice. Well, see, I'm the opposite, really. I had one in the past, and now I definitely don't. And then when people ask me to go out, and I finally do, it gets to about 9:30, and I think, oh my God, I need to go home. I'm knackered. And what does knackered mean, Dan?
To be extremely tired.
Yeah, so I get to 9:30 and I think, oh my God, I'm knackered. I need to go to bed. And another disadvantage, which I noticed only today, actually, when I cycled to the beach at 6 o'clock in the morning, is there are lots of dogs around at that time. People walk their dogs at that time. And
how do you cope?
Well, a nice word there. How do you cope? How do you manage? Well, generally I'm on my bike and I've now realised I can go faster than a dog. So when they chase me, which is like when they follow me in a horrible way, I can actually move faster than one. But I am now actually, honestly, petrified of them.
You would hate it here in Toulouse.
Okay, well, I was thinking of coming to see you, but I'm not now.
There's dogs and dog shit everywhere.
Oh, well, I prefer dog shit to dogs, I think. At least dog shit doesn't chase you. You can move away from dog shit much easier than a dog.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
philosophy.
Well, that's it, Dan. When I said they're petrified of dogs, that means very scared, by the way. I forgot to mention. Okay, so now let's talk about how we can get up early, Dan. So what was your tactic to wake up at 4:30 when you were mentally strong?
When I was mentally strong, I would go to bed about 6 hours and 15 minutes before I wanted to get up.
Nice. And very, very precise as well there, Dan. I like it. Notice how there he said, I would go to bed. So we use the would for repeated past actions, Dan. Did you know that?
I did, yeah.
I don't think you did. My main tactic is putting the alarm on the other side of the room because I've noticed many people like to use the snooze button. So what is the snooze button, Dan, on an alarm?
It's when you temporarily turn the alarm off.
Yeah, it's like you press it and then it lets you sleep for 5 more minutes and then you press it again. And then people end up doing this for about half an hour. Remember, end up there is something you didn't intend to do, but then you did. So you ended up doing that.
Well, yeah, I used to do that as well. I had about 5 alarms.
I saw someone say once, I don't know where, maybe even I said it because, I'm so intelligent. But anyway, said that waking up is always horrible. So why go through that 5 or 6 times? Just wake up once and then that's it. Because if you have the snooze button for 5, 6 times, you have to wake up 5 or 6 times. It's crazy.
Can I just say something? You just mentioned that you probably said it. I was out the other day talking to people at a music festival about music and the Beatles came up. And someone I was with said, yeah, but they just came out of the right place at the right time, to which caused quite a bit of a stir. And I said, I've heard that before. And it was because they'd listened to the podcast and you said it. So you have to be careful with your words.
Well, Dan, I am influencing the world now here, okay? So nice rock and roll vocabulary there, Dan, when he said it caused a bit of a stir. So that would mean it caused a bit of a disagreement. Well, I'm sorry to do that to you, Dan, but I need to continue my mission of influencing the world, okay?
It's terrifying.
Well, I actually have some other useful information for people because I have, I'm going to share with them my alarm, okay? So this is my alarm. You will notice it starts very slowly. But it then kicks in. So what do I mean, Dan, if I say it then kicks in?
Where it gets more intense.
Yes, exactly. So listen now for when it kicks in. Whoa, I am ready to wake up, Dan. How about you after listening to that music?
I agree, yeah. I think you've been listening to that for a long time.
I've had it for about 2 years now, and in the situations where someone is in a bedroom with me, very rare, generally is male friends actually, even you, Dan, I think, have listened to this. They always say to me, oh, that's a great song to have for your alarm. What do you think, Dan?
Well, like you said, I've already told you. I like it.
I'd just like to hear you agree with me because it's so rare.
Mm-hmm.
And another tactic to wake up early, apparently, is to think of something exciting the night before you go to bed. So what do you think of, Dan?
I normally think about what I need to do the next day.
Wow,
which is rarely exciting, so...
Especially in the past when you were working. So what you had to do the next day was go to work.
No, before work. Because obviously I'd go to the gym at 4:30, come back at 6, and then I'd have 2 hours to do what I want.
Okay. The thing that helps me get out of bed, and this is serious, is I think about the shower at the gym because it's like the best shower in the world. And I think if I don't go, I will have to have a shower at my house, and that is absolutely shit. So if I do wake up now, I will have that amazing shower at the gym. So
yeah, is that exciting?
It's the most exciting thing that happens to me in the day, Dan. And I think that gives you everything you need to know about my life.
Yeah.
And one last piece of information here, another quote. I thought this quote was from Benjamin Franklin again. I thought I'd seen it from him somewhere.
Have you just read a book by Benjamin Franklin or something?
No, but I actually just tried to look this up on the internet and couldn't find it. So
I know this quote because you've rattled it off to me before, and then I double checked it and couldn't find it.
Well, that's exactly it, Dan. It doesn't seem to exist. I think maybe I just invented it. Because that, again, going back to what we were saying before, how intelligent I am and how I am similar to Jesus and sort of a missionary. Yeah, exactly.
A prophet.
Yeah, a prophet. Yeah, that's a good one. So yeah, if you don't know, a prophet is like a messenger from God. And obviously I am delivering God's messages. And finally, I will tell you the quote, which is, anyone can go to bed late, but it takes a man of discipline to wake up early.
You see, this is why people might think you're intelligent, because you're making up quotes and then attributing them to people like Benjamin Franklin.
Making up there is inventing, a very nice phrasal verb. But like I said, I couldn't find it on the internet, so that's why I think I did make up this quote, Dan. And so if you want to use that, anyone...
Quote me.
Yeah, just say, where did you hear that? Rock and roll English, okay?
It's actually a good quote.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. We will finally, for the first time ever, leave on a positive note and after a compliment from you.
Yeah, incredible.
Thank you very much. We'll see you later.
Speak to you later.
See you later. Okay, so that was Dan and me speaking about the benefits of waking up early. So let's look at some of that rock and roll vocabulary. Dan used the term God knows when he was talking about Benjamin Franklin, and he said he died God knows how long ago. I think we may have had this before, and we use it obviously when we don't know the answer to something and only God knows. So we say God knows. And we had the word wealthy when we had that quote from Mr. Franklin. It said makes a man wealthy and wise. So wealthy is like a more formal way to say rich, actually. It's not so nice to say, he's rich. Probably better to say he's wealthy. And we had a very nice term here when I was saying that successful people go to bed early. So something didn't quite add up because Dan goes to bed early and he is not successful. So we use this to say something doesn't make sense. Something doesn't add up. And we had the word hardcore, which is when someone does something in a very strong way, let's say. I used it when Dan said that he woke up at 4:30 and I said, that is hardcore. For example, I make 2 podcasts a week. If someone said to me, I make 10, I would say, that is hardcore. And we had a very nice word, which is bonkers, which means completely crazy, when Dan said that he woke up at 4:30, and I said, yeah, that is bonkers. It's obviously not a formal word, but it's not a swear word. It's actually a very nice and funny thing to say. But the next word is a swear word, when Dan said that's bollocks, when I told him I do more in 3 hours than he does in a week, which I think is true and is not bollocks. We had a very nice phrasal verb of get into, when I said to Dan he only got into waking up early after he left school, and that's the reason he did shit in school. So remember, it means when you start doing something or become interested in something. And notice the ing comes after it, get into, waking up earlier. And just for the record, he didn't do totally shit in school, but I definitely did better than him. And we had the word fast, which remember is when you don't eat for an amount of time. But it's usually used in the ing form. So, for example, I'm fasting, or he is fasting. So he is just not eating. And that came from the very interesting fact about breakfast, although we don't actually say breakfast. But anyway, it was actually interesting because I didn't know that until I made this podcast. And we had the word knackered, which means really tired. When I said I need to go home at like 9:30 when I go out because I'm knackered. Very informal, but very funny and cool thing to say. A nice term Dan said is how do you cope? How do you manage? And we also had the word chase, when dogs chase me. So as I mentioned in the podcast, it's similar to follow, but if someone chases you, that's generally not a good thing and usually involves you running and someone chasing. For example, if you want to get away from the police will chase you. But the best thing to do is not break the law, and then the police won't chase you. We had a very nice word as well of petrified, when I said I'm petrified of dogs, which means very, very scared, which is true, the bastards. We had the word snooze button, which is the part of the alarm you press when you can sleep for 5 more minutes. It comes from the word snooze, which is just a little sleep, which is exactly what a 5-minute sleep is, so we call it the snooze button. And we had the phrasal verb end up again, when I was talking about the snooze button, and I said people end up doing it for about half an hour, which remember means you didn't want to do it, but then you do. And again, like get into, the ing is followed by it. So end up doing something. We had a very nice term of when Dan said it caused a bit of a stir. So just remember that term exactly how it is. And it means like it caused a disagreement. It's quite a funny thing to say again. Not so formal, but it's definitely not offensive or anything. When the music kicks in was another one. So remember we played the song, and when it kicks in, it's when the song becomes more intense. Very often used with music. And we had the word prophet, which remember is like a messenger from God. And speaking of messages from God, I have just received another one from him, and he said to tell all of you rockers and rollers to leave me a review on iTunes. So these are God's words, they are not mine. And he also said, if you do, to send me a picture of it because often I can't see it. And one last thing, if anyone's interested, the name of the song that I played, which is also my alarm, is called The Intro and is sung by The XX. And I say sung, there are no words in the song, but it is a song by The XX. Anyway, remember, all of the vocabulary is on the website, rockandrollenglish.com. There's a quiz, and the words are obviously written there, so you can also write them down to remember them. Anyway, thanks a lot for listening. Remember to wake up early, and I will see you on Thursday. Keep on rocking, baby.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.